be solved. He just didn't know when. The newspaper pointed out that homicide was extremely rare in Neenah. The last one, this is 1973, the last one was in 1952, and the one before that was in 1908.
Wow. That's why we don't have a lot of stories for Neenah.
That's why we don't have a lot of stories for Neenah. I also don't think this is accurate. I think this is not correct because I don't remember the exact year. I want to say it's 1963. But there was a guy killed, when we did this story, there was a guy killed at a gas station. And I think they're like, oh, well, that didn't happen in Neenah because it was off the highway outside of city limits.
so it was like the village of Menasha or something?
Yeah, so it was probably tackled by the county sheriff and not by the Neenah Police Department. So on a technicality, yes, it wasn't in Neenah. Mm. But I think you would still refer to that as a Neenah gas station.
Yeah.
So I think this makes it sound... But either way, from the police department's point of view, they haven't had to solve a murder in over 10 years. Mm-hmm. Almost 20 years. So it is unusual for them. Things kind of go quiet after that. On January 29th, 1975, so this is now about a year and a half later, a John Doe probe was launched by Judge William Crane investigating armed robbery in Winnebago County. Since July 1973, there had been 16 armed robberies in Winnebago, with many similarities between them. A parade of witnesses from Neenah, Menasha, and Oshkosh testified in secret. Based on who was coming and going, the newspaper soon realized that part of the investigation, if not the main point of the investigation, was the William Paul murder. On the first day, 10 people testified, and by day 2, Crane confirmed that the robbery was part of the investigation. Officially, this was to try to get these armed robberies solved and see the connection between them. But of course, one of the armed robberies also involved a murder, so that one was sort of top of the pile there. Mm-hmm. I should mention at this point, for the people who listen to the Milwaukee Mafia podcast, we talk about John Doe probes sometimes. Mm-hmm. Don't know that it's really much come up on Fox
That's a good point, yeah, actually.
Don't know it's really come up on Fox City's Murder and Mayhem. John Doe probe is a weird thing that's a Wisconsin thing. I'm pretty sure Wisconsin's the only state that has it. It's kind of like a grand jury where a judge or other official calls a series of hearings on a specific topic, and people come in, they testify. It's all secret. It never comes out. Sometimes if things go to trial, like part of the testimony might come out to be used in trial, but otherwise it remains secret. 50 years, 100 years can pass. You'll never see what people talked about there. And at the end of this, the judge, prosecutors, whatever, go through it and they see if they can come up with something to start charging people with what they're looking into. So when we do Milwaukee Mafia, usually what they're looking into is gambling. Here, it's specifically armed robbery. But for people who aren't familiar with what a John Doe probe is, that's what it is. It's just a kind of a secret hearing where people testify on specific topics which as opposed to like a normal. Generally speaking, when you get people to testify, it's like to target a specific person to charge them with it. Here, there's no specific person. It's to kind of figured out if there will be a person to target. So it's a weird system because you're basically investigating a crime with no known person to charge anything with.
And I feel it's imperative to point out, too, that.
Yeah.
Because this is something that was used back in the day quite regularly. Mm-hmm. But it is by no means gone today.
It is not gone.
It doesn't
at all.
happen nearly as often today, but they still do use this in the state of Wisconsin.
They do still use it in the state of Wisconsin.
Which is just mind-blowing to me because I feel like this made sense probably 60 years ago, maybe. But today, there's just way better technologies and stuff than a bunch of hearsay. But I guess it still gets you kind of...
Well, it's not technically hearsay because they are under oath. So it's like they're not just...
Yeah.
They're not just telling you random rumors they heard. They're calling in people who should know something about something.
Yeah, I suppose. It's just a really weird
and even though
system.
it's secret, you can be charged with perjury if you lie. So there is some kind of checks and balances to it.
You know, and we talked about on one of our Mafia episodes about how there's just weird things that that happen, and we talked about the weird alcohol laws on our last Patreon episode that Gavin is going to research and figure out why these weird laws.
Yeah,
this would be another thing.
We're just advertising every podcast this episode. Yeah,
with this one. This would be another one of the things I would like to...
Where John Doe came from?
Where it came from, and why is it only in Wisconsin?
We could do that.
Yeah, because that's really an interesting thing to me, too.
That'd probably end up on the Patreon as well, but we could do that.
Yeah, because I think that would be a very interesting thing to learn about. So
okay. Yeah. Offhand, I don't know. I'm sure I've read it in the past, but I don't remember. So, yeah, we could do that.
So... But nothing ever comes of this, or we still got more notes?
There's still a little more notes.
Okay.
Still a little more notes.
Let's finish the story before I ask any more questions.
Okay. So even though this is supposed to be secret, reporters were lurking outside the courthouse, seeing who was coming in and out of the building that day. They didn't hear any of the testimony, but they were able to identify some of the people coming and going. They found Thomas Jury, age 23, Darwin Moore, age 26, Bruce Johnson, age 25, his wife Judy Johnson, Stanley Samuel, age 26, and Patricia Allen. Patricia Allen was the girlfriend of Leroy Chapin, age 24, who was currently on trial for robbing an Oshkosh pharmacy. Chapin himself was not at the John Doe, and I'm guessing this is probably because he was currently on trial. I don't know exactly how this would play out, but it seems like that would be like a Fifth Amendment violation to ask people about armed robberies while they're on trial for armed robbery, because he'd then have to like talk about the crimes he's actively involved in. So I don't know. I'm not sure exactly why he wasn't there, but I'm guessing it's something to do with that. The men they were able to identify were known criminals, not major criminals, but known criminals. A couple of them were actually still behind bars at the time and were brought out of prison to testify. Because Winnebago had seen numerous armed robberies in the last 2 years, they were hoping that, you know, if these guys could help solve one of them, it would solve others. I don't know that it helped solve any of them, but they were able to get these guys on the record about what they knew about different people who were in armed robbery gangs. Don't know what they said because it's a John Doe probe, but they got guys who they knew to be armed robbers to talk about it. And then this 1975 fades away again. In 1981, jumping back to the original thing that I wanted to do, but we didn't get to do because I didn't find anything. 1981, the tavern was surveyed for possible inclusion as a state historic landmark.
Really?
Yes. Or as part of a historic business district. Although the Wisconsin Historical Society does maintain a file on the property, it does not appear that it was ever declared a landmark. When the city of Neenah did their own survey in 2004, because Neenah has its own landmarks commission that they can declare local things of historic relevance. When they looked in 2004, the building had been demolished. Not that there would have been any evidence from the murder there, in 2004, 30 years later, but this effectively removed any known site connected with the crime. So now there's nothing remaining today that if you were one of those weird people that likes to visit crime scenes, sorry, you can't. And if the building was ever going to be considered historic, well, it didn't happen because they tore it down. Around February 1991, over 17 years after the crime, authorities announced that they had taken hair and blood samples from a suspect, a 40-year-old man in Waupun State Prison. Both blood and hair were found at the crime scene that did not match Paul's blood and hair. Paul had type O blood, but the blood found was type B. This new lead came to light when an informant told Neenah Police Captain Lee Parrott the two men told him the day before the robbery and murder what they had planned to do. He had overheard them talking in the Doty Tavern. The alleged suspect's girlfriend also told police that he had made comments suggesting he was involved. Court filings for this search warrant to get the blood in the hair